So I know a lot of your recent work centers on Caló and the Pachuca identity, and you mentioned how diving into that dialect and subculture became a way to fuel the creative fire. So first, can you talk a little bit about what this is for those who may not know, and also what was surprising for you as you went deeper into that world?
Yeah, so I'll start with Pachucos because Pachucos are it's like hipsters or yuppies. It's like a sort of demographic or a style or a group of people who are together. Pachucos traditionally the culture comes from El Paso and migrated west and really settled in LA and sort of left its mark all throughout the American Southwest. Pachucos were a movement of people mostly during and post World War II who were Mexican American, Hispanic, Latine, who took a lot of pride in their culture. Instead of suddenly being ashamed of who they were wearing zoot suits, they were dancing mambo, they were making up slang like any other culture or subculture would make up slang. They would modify their cars, right? They would walk with swagger. And actually, the Pachuco movement is still very much alive in Southern California, where I live. I mean, I think I could see a lowrider 2 or 3 times a week just driving down the road, right? And
Right.
I freaking love lowriders, actually. I really do. My cousin has one, those old Oldsmobiles. So those are the people, right? And infamous for having like the Zoot Suit riots, which were really instigated by the United States Navy at the time, people who were back from the war. Caló is the dialect that they spoke. So saying like, we're saying a word like way means like dude, like guachame is like sort of you'd mix up indigeneity and English and Spanish. So guachame means like watch me, like if you're dancing, like
Mm,
guachame.
yeah.
Or like making up little rhymes, like "que te pasa calabaza," like "what's up pumpkin," just because it rhymes and it's fun. This just learning about that dialect was hugely important to me, and it was because my grandparents were Pachucos on my dad's side, especially. My grandparents were all my family's all from New Mexico, but on my dad's side, my grandma and grandpa Benavides dressed super sharply. Like there's these amazing pictures of them with like a sort of pencil thin mustache, like beautiful shirt. Like her hair was like my grandma's hair was braided and she had this beautiful blouse standing in front of like an old like Chevy truck, like leaning up against it, like short, sort of like 50s shorts, right? My grandpa had like the pomaded hair with like the boucle, like a curl on top that was just perfect, right? And they would dance mambo and he would speak a certain way with a certain accent. And I realized that as a kid, you just think, oh, my grandparents just speak with an accent. And realizing that it's actually different than a usual Spanish language accent. It's actually a Calo accent. It's from speaking like, I'm sure 50 years from now, I'll speak with a certain like trendy accent from, the 2020s,
Sure.
whatever
Yeah.
that means. And my kids and grandkids will be like, grandpa speaks kind of funny. And instead of thinking that's just how old people speak, we should be asking, why do they speak that way? Did they speak that way when they were young? What was their life like when they were young? Because we so often see people as they are in the moment instead of as a collection of their stories. And when my grandpa passed, I wrote a piece called Rinconcito, which was an instrumental piece to sort of process the grief about losing him and losing his stories and all those things. And it really set me down a path of like, well, what is Kalo? Like, can I learn to say words like he said? Can I learn to interpret what he said? So we interviewed him. I have messages from him. I have sound clips from him speaking, and it just really set me off in this inventive way. And even now, I'm writing a piece. I'm so lucky. I'm gonna have to like put on my like I'm boastful cap for a second, but I have to
Please
to
do.
talk about
Yeah.
this piece, which I try to avoid doing. But I'm so lucky. I'm doing a piece for the LA Phil and Dudamel this coming season, which I'm like so pinch me beyond myself excited that I got chosen to do this for his farewell season. And we're all being inspired by the Great Wall of LA. And I really, really wanted to write about the Zoot Suit riots and the movement, and not because I want to write like a Zoot Suit riot. Like I don't want to do
Sure. Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And nor do I want to write like a Bernstein-esque mambo, right,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
West Side Story. I really want to spend time learning about something that I don't know as much about, which is exactly what transpired from the point of view of the Pachucos. Like, what were they really arguing about? I know that they were seen as disrespectful because at the time when we were rationing, having excessive fabric and clothing was seen as wasteful and we should be using fabric for the war effort and copper and gasoline, etc. But also like there's an inherent value in artistic expression and community and resilience, right? part of you wonders if it wasn't the Mexican Americans and Chicanos and Hispanic and Latine populations dressing that way, if people would have been like, oh, well, we need it for solidarity and community. Like, it's okay to, why was it that that was worth starting a fight over at the time? And why did it spread so rapidly? It wasn't just about that fight the night of, right? It had to have been long simmering misunderstandings and issues over years throughout the war that led to that kind of situation. So, I'm super happy to be writing that piece, but it's still there after even writing a song cycle, writing instrumental pieces, thinking about this topic. It keeps giving. And if David Teltredegy can write about Alice in Wonderland over and over again, I could write about
Yeah.
Pachucos over and over again, right? Why not?
This dialect, Caló dialect, I mean, if I may ask, I mean, is there anything like musical about it, or is there anything about this dialect that you can draw from, like, musically, whether that's like rhythm or, I mean, do you kind of look to these sources as like direct musical inspiration in that way, or is it more just simply the subject matter of your pieces?
It's kind of a mix. So when I think about my song cycle, which was when I really went down this rabbit hole called Canto Caló, which just means I sing Caló, or it could also mean Caló, songs in Caló, right? And I set some text set by my grandfather. I also had my collaborator Melinda Martinez Becker. She's the mezzo who premiered the pieces, write some thoughts of her own, and I also wrote some original poetry, which I don't usually do, but that's one of the few autobiographical pieces I would say that I've set. But it's still removed. Some of the songs take from the corridos that you would hear from the Frontera region, like música norteña, sort of sounds like I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Like when you think of loud guitars, people singing outside, right?
Yeah.
Like you think of
Yeah.
not exactly mariachis, but sometimes mariachis, right? Singing. You think of that effect. That occurs sometimes in the piece, sure. And I even modeled the corrido, that's the finale, after one of my favorite corridos that I played growing up. I modeled it out in structurally, not really by words or musically, just thinking about how do you tell an adventurer's story moment to moment. And I tried to write words that told a similar adventurer story, except for instead of being some assassin, my adventurer is an accordion playing bard traveling the countryside, playing music in different towns, right? Which is an homage to my grandfather Garcia. So yeah, like musically it's there, but oftentimes it's also not. I some of the songs like the one that Melinda wrote about how her grandmother, who's New Mexican as well, would like braid her hair. I think it sounds far more, I mean, I don't even know, far more contemporary American as a compositional style. And other moments sound, you know, I can't think of anything else other than contemporary American in the way that like tonality has been pushed in
Sure.
extensions work, and it's still tonal. There's still a center, but it's not a throwback. It's not meant to sound old. It's meant to sound of today, right? And so it bounces back and forth, and I think the interest happens in the pendulum swinging from what is it like to dip my toe into an old style and then come back and try to sound like me right now. And actually, that's what the piece is about. It's about remembering my grandparents and her grandparents, going into their time and reflecting on how they felt like being drafted into the Korean War, and then back to modern time. What does it feel like to hear his story now? And that's where the cycle exists.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Kline, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.